Step 4 is teaching acceptable student behavior. For you to have classroom management and a well-disciplined class, step 4 is how are you going to teach acceptable student behavior? So there's some important strategies on page 115 to 116 that I want you to know, everyone, because they're that important. So what are some strategies for increasing responsible behavior? The very first one I want you to know is modeling acceptable behavior. How you choose to interact with the students is going to encourage responsible behavior. Do you treat them with respect? Do you everyone to treat each other with respect? Modeling acceptable behavior, very, very important. The second strategy is using reinforcement. I want you to know you need to give the students specific positive feedback about the quality of their behavior. Not with punishment, but giving them specific positive feedback about the quality of their behavior. So when you're giving corrective feedback, make sure it identifies an acceptable level of behavior. If you are reinforcing acceptable behavior, then explain why the behavior is acceptable and say how much you appreciate it. The third strategy, offer time for responsibility and reflection. What are we talking about here? You're going to give the students time to think about the attitudes and behavior that are associated with each level. If you look back on page 114 to 115, we had these, Hellison has these four levels of behavior. Level 0, there's actually 5 levels because level 0 is irresponsible. Level 1 is self-control. Level 2 is involvement. Level 3 is self-responsibility. And level 4 is caring. So every student should be striving to be level 4. And if you can read through those real quick, they give you some very good ideas because you're talking about the behavior of the students, because you don't want anybody to operate at level 0, but they do sometimes because they're blaming others and so forth. On the playground, they're calling other students names. In PE, they're talking to friends when you're talking. Then there's level 1 with self-control. They have self-control and they refrain from hitting a brother or sister, even though they're angry when they're at home. On the playground, they stand and watch others play. So they're not bad, they're just not engaged. In PE, they're waiting until an appropriate time to talk with friends. So they have self-control. But we want them to be involved, which is level 2. They help clean up at home. On the playground, they play with others. In PE, they listen and perform the activities, and they try them. Then on level 3, they show some self-responsibility by cleaning up without being asked to at home. They return the equipment after recess or at the end of recess on the playground without being told. And in PE, they follow directions and practice skills. On level 4, it's even one step more. At home, they help take care of a youngster, a young brother or sister. On the playground, they may ask others, not just a friend, to join in and play. And in PE, they help someone who is having trouble. So these are the 5 levels that students tend to exhibit. And so when we're talking about giving them time to think about what level they're on, this is what they're referring to. You can pinpoint one of the levels because you've discussed it with the students, the class, in great detail, and they understand the different levels. They might offer their own opinion or their own suggestions of different things, attitudes that can be done at the different levels that students exhibit and get involved and act like they, and they make them feel like they're contributing. Allowing student sharing. This offers the students the chance to give their opinions about responsible behavior. That's basically what I was just talking about. Encouraging goal setting. I can't say enough about that. I think that's one of the major life-changing philosophies, strategies I've had for myself. It might be small goal settings of what I need to get done within the next hour, within the next few hours, by tonight, by tomorrow morning, by the end of the semester, by the end of the week, whatever it may be. These minor little goals. So with the students, it's encouraging, you're trying to encourage them to set goals for responsible behavior. Offering opportunities for responsibility. I talked about squad leaders earlier, being a team captain, maybe even a referee or a scorekeeper, but getting them involved. Allow student choice, choosing about the games they choose to play. Miss Erica allows that on Fridays if they've been good all week long. She allows them student choice. So some very, very good ideas here on strategies for increasing responsible behavior that you need to know. This is a great example of a checklist that you could have the student put his name or her name at the top and the date and how do they feel like they acted today or maybe all week long, whatever you may want to do. But this is a good summary of where you want them to be. Notice level 0 is not on there. Irresponsibility, it's not on there because we don't want to be irresponsible. We want to either be self-control, involvement, self-responsibility, or work towards caring. Another issue concerning teaching acceptable student behavior is how to use conflict resolution to reduce bullying. In your book, it says nearly 1/3 of U.S. elementary school students say they are frequently bullied at school, and that was back in 2007. So that's 12 years ago. I want you to know bullying as the use of either observable or unobservable aggressive behavior where an imbalance of power exists between the offender and the offended. That's what bullying is. You're either observing it or it's not observable. Aggressive behavior where there's an imbalance of power. One person thinks he's in control or should be in control between the two people, the offender and the offended. So what are some ways that we can resolve conflicts? Well, number one, we need to stop the aggressive behavior immediately. We cannot let it continue on. Number two, gather the data about what happened and both sides of the story. Then we would want to brainstorm, and you might have to talk to fellow teachers about this. What are some possible solutions? Or you can ask, how could we solve this problem with the students? You talk to them and say, how could we deal with this? Then number 4 talks about testing your solutions generated through brainstorming. What solutions might work? Help the students understand the consequences, the implications of the solutions they choose to implement. And then you actually implement the plan. And then after you implement the plan, you're going to realize, was it a good plan or not so good of a plan? And that's where you evaluate it afterwards to see. I was looking to see, oh, yes, they do talk about it in your book, and I love it. The couple of paragraphs before these steps to resolve conflicts, they talk about the dominator and the appeaser, and then the cooperative approach. It's very important that you understand the dominator is the person who is unsure about himself or herself when standing in the group, but they want things to be done in their way. But they're afraid they'll be rejected by others. So they may lack the confidence, and they're going to try hard to get others to accept their way of doing things. But then you have the appeaser who always gives in, lacks confidence also, but wants to be accepted by others. But they do not like conflict, and so they're willing to put down their own feelings in order to placate the others. Neither the dominator or the appeaser is the type of approach that will work to solve conflicts in the long run. It might be a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution. What we want is the cooperative approach to solve these conflicts in a peaceful manner where there's no apparent losers. And this is where it falls into my philosophy of a 50-50 approach. Both parties got to give a little and take a little. Another way to teach acceptable student behavior is to have peer mediation. where the students will resolve their own disputes and conflicts. The students are trained to help identify problems behind the conflicts. The teachers do not interact. It's the students who are actually taking care of resolving this issue. These peer mediators, they are going to ask the disputing students to tell their stories and ask students questions to clarify the situation. But you got to make sure that all the students are going to be able to tell their story, both sides of the story. You also need to make sure with the situations of bullying or name calling, spreading rumors. These are common situations. So there's two parts of the mediation process: establishing ground rules and following the steps of mediation. So what are the ground rules as you see here? The problem will be solved. The students, both parties, need to understand that the problem is going to be solved before they leave there. And they need to understand the truth will be told. They must agree to tell the truth regardless of the effect on the situation. Since the students are the ones solving the problem without any adult supervision, telling the truth is not going to result in any negative consequences to the student. The full story will be heard without interruptions. All parties will act in a respectful manner. The arbitrator and the parties in conflict must agree to not discuss this situation with non-participants. The discussion has to be in confidence. So what are the mediation steps on page 117? And it's not on this slide, but I want you to know these. So once you've gotten the ground rules agreed on, the steps to finding a mediated solution are as follows. Number one, tell your story or your grievance. You got to lay it all out on the table. Step number two, verify the story. All the participants are going to have the opportunity to ask questions to clarify or verify their story. The mediator is going to find out exactly what happened and how each party feels. Discuss the conflict. The mediator conducts a discussion about the situation and the emotions involved. Brainstorming solutions to the problem. Emphasizing finding solutions to resolve the situation for both parties. It's very important that you understand there is not a predetermined solution. They are going to brainstorm solutions and possible solutions. Then they're going to discuss and implement the agreed upon solution. Both parties have to agree to follow the ground rules. One rule was to solve the problem, so it is unacceptable to leave without a solution. And then they sign a contract. After they agree to that solution, they sign a contract. So this is a very effective way. If it's something a situation that can't seem to be resolved amongst the parties, and it continually happens at your school. Peer mediation.